This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. That's LibriVox.org. Recorded by me, Glenn Hallstrom, also known as Smokestack Jones. SmokestackJones@gmail.com. You'll also find my blog at TooMuchJohnson.blogspot.com. The Picture in the House by H.P. Lovecraft. Searchers after horror haunt strange far places. For them are the catacombs of Tomei and the carven mausolea of the nightmare countries. They climb to the moonlit towers of ruined Rhine castles and falter down black cobweb steps beneath the scattered stones of forgotten cities in Asia. The haunted wood and the desolate mountain are their shrines, and they linger around the sinister monoliths of uninhabited islands. But the true epicure of the terrible, to whom a new thrill of unalterable ghastliness is the chief end and justification of existence, esteems most of all the ancient, lonely farmhouses of backwoods New England. For there the dark elements of strength, solitude, grotesqueness, and ignorance combine to form the perfection of the hideous. Most horrible of all the sights are the little unpainted wooden houses remote from traveled ways, usually squatted upon some damp grassy slope or leaning against some gigantic outcropping of rock. 200 years and more they have leaned or squatted there, while the vines have crawled and the trees have swelled and spread. They are almost hidden now in lawless luxuriances of green and guardian shrouds of shadow, but the small paned windows still stare shockingly, as if blinking through a lethal stupor which wards off madness by dulling the memory of unutterable things. In such houses have dwelt generations of strange peoples like the world has never seen, seized with a gloomy and fanatical belief which exiled them from their kind. Their ancestors sought the wilderness for freedom. Their scions of a conquering race indeed flourished free from the restrictions of their fellows, but cowered in an appalling slavery to the dismal phantasms of their own minds. Divorced from the enlightenment of civilization, the strength of these Puritans turned into singular channels, and in their isolation, morbid self-repression, and struggle for life with relentless nature, there came to them dark, furtive traits from the prehistoric depths of their cold northern heritage. By necessity practical and by philosophy stern, these folks were not beautiful in their sins. Erring as all mortals must, they were forced by their rigid code to seek concealment above all else, so that they came to use less and less taste in what they concealed. Only the silent, sleepy, staring houses in the backwoods can tell all that has lain hidden since the early days, and they are not communicative, being loath to shake off the drowsiness which helps them forget. Sometimes one feels that it would be merciful to tear down these houses, for they must often dream. It was to a time-battered edifice of this description that I was driven one afternoon in November 1896 by a rain of such chilling copiousness that any shelter was preferable to exposure. I had been traveling for some time amongst the people of the Miskatonic Valley in quest of certain genealogical data, and from the remote, devious, and problematical nature of my course, had deemed it convenient to employ a bicycle, despite the lateness of the season. Now I found myself in an apparently abandoned road, which I had chosen as the shortest cut to Arkham, overtaken by the storm at a point far from any town, and confronted with no refuge save the antique and repellent wooden building which blinked with blue windows from between two huge, leafless elms near the foot of a rocky hill. Distant though it is from the remnant of the road, the house nonetheless impressed me unfavorably when I espied it. Honest, wholesome structures do not stare at travelers so slyly and hauntingly, and in my genealogical researches I had encountered legends of a century before which biased me against places of this kind. Yet the force of the elements was such as to overcome my scruples, and I did not hesitate to wheel my machine up the weedy rise through the closed door which seemed at once so suggestive and secret. I had somehow taken it for granted that the house was abandoned, yet as I approached, I was not so sure, for though the walks were indeed overgrown with weeds, they seemed to retain their nature a little too well to argue complete desertion. Therefore, instead of trying the door, I knocked, feeling as I did so a trepidation I could scarcely explain. As I waited on the rough, mossy rock which served as a doorstep, I glanced at the neighboring windows and the panes of the transom above me and noticed that, although old, almost opaque with dirt, they were not broken. The building, then, must still be inhabited, despite its isolation and general neglect. However, my rapping evoked no response, so after repeating the summons, I tried the rusty latch and found the door unfastened. Inside was a little vestibule with walls from which the plaster was falling, and through the doorway there came a faint but peculiarly hateful odor. I entered, carrying my bicycle, and closed the door behind me. Ahead rose a narrow staircase flanked by a small door, probably leading to the cellar, while to the left and right were closed doors leading to rooms on the ground floor. Leaning my cycle against the wall, I opened the door at the left and crossed into a small, low-ceilinged chamber, but dimly lighted by its two dusty windows and furnished in the barest and most primitive possible way. It appeared to be a kind of sitting room, for it had a table and several chairs and an immense fireplace, above which ticked an antique clock on a mantel. Books and papers were very few, and in the prevailing gloom I could not readily discern the titles. What interested me was the uniform air of archaism as displayed in every visible detail. Most of the houses in the region I had found rich in relics of the past, but here the antiquity was curiously complete, for in all the room I could not discover a single article of definitely post-revolutionary date. Had the furnishings been less humble, the place would have been a collector's paradise. As I surveyed its quaint apartment, I felt an increase in that aversion first excited by the bleak exterior of the house. Just what it was that I feared or loathed, I could by no means define, but something in the whole atmosphere seemed redolent of unhallowed age, of unpleasant crudeness, and of secrets which should be forgotten. I felt disinclined to sit down, and wandered about examining the various articles which I had noticed. The first object of my curiosity was a book, medium size, lying upon the table and presenting such an antediluvian aspect that I marveled at beholding it outside a museum or library. It was bound in leather with metal fittings, and it was in an excellent state of preservation, being altogether an unusual sort of volume to encounter in an abode so lowly. When I opened it to the title page, my wonder grew even greater, for it provided to be nothing less rare than Pigafetta's account of the Congo region, written in Latin from the notes of the sailor Lopex and printed in Frankfurt in 1598. I had often heard of this work, with its curious illustrations by the brothers Debray, hence for a moment forgot my uneasiness and my desire to turn the pages before me. The engravings were indeed interesting, drawn wholly from imagination and careless descriptions, and represented Negroes with white skins and Caucasian features. Nor would I soon have closed the book had not an exceedingly trivial circumstance upset my tired nerves and revived my sensation of disquiet. What annoyed me was the merely persistent way in which the volume tended to fall open of itself at plate 12, which represented in gruesome detail the butcher's shop of the cannibal Aztecs. I experienced some shame at my susceptibility to do so slight a thing, but the drawing nevertheless disturbed me, especially in connection with some adjacent passages descriptive of Aztec gastronomy. I had turned to a neighboring shelf and was examining its meager literary contents, an 18th century Bible, A Pilgrim's Progress, of black period, illustrated with grotesque woodcuts, and printed by the almanac maker Isaiah Thomas, the writing bulk of Cotton Mather's Magnalia Christi Americana, and a few other books of evidently equal age, when my attention was aroused by the unmistakable sound of walking in the room overhead. At first astonished and startled, and considering the lack of response to my recent knocking at the door, I immediately afterward concluded that the walker had just awakened from a sound sleep, and listened with less surprise as the first steps sounded on the creaking stairs. The tread was heavy. It seemed to contain a curious quality of cautiousness, a quality which I disliked the more because the tread was heavy. When I had entered the room, I had shut the door behind me. Now, after a moment of silence during which the walker may have been inspecting my bicycle in the hall, I heard a fumbling at the latch and saw the paneled portal swing open again. In the doorway stood a person of such singular appearance that I should have exclaimed aloud but for the restraints of good breeding. Old, white-bearded, and ragged, my host possessed a countenance and physique which inspired equal wonder and respect. His height could not have been less than 6 feet, and despite a general air of age and poverty, he was stout and powerful in proportion. His face, almost hidden by a long beard which grew high on his cheeks, seemed abnormally ruddy and less wrinkled than one might expect, while over a high forehead fell a shock of white hair, a little thinned by the years. His blue eyes, though a trifle bloodshot, seemed inexplicably keen and burning. But for his horrible unkemptness, the man would have been as distinguished-looking as he was impressive. This unkemptness, however, made him offensive despite his face and figure. Of what his clothing consisted I could hardly tell, for it seemed to me no more than a mass of tatters surmounting a pair of high, heavy boots, and his lack of cleanliness surpassed description. The appearance of this man and the instinctive fear he inspired prepared me for something like enmity, so that I almost shuddered through surprise and a sense of uncanny incongruity when he motioned me to a chair and addressed me in a thin, weak voice full of fawning respect and ingratiating hospitality. His speech was very curious, an extreme form of Yankee dialect I had thought long extinct, and I studied it closely as he sat down opposite me for conversation. "Catched in the rain, be ye?" he greeted. "Glad you was nigh the house and hadn't the sense to come right in. I calculate I was asleep, but outside heerd ye. Ain't as young as I used to be, and I need a powerful sight of naps nowadays. Travelin' fur? I ain't seen many folks for long this wood since they took off the Arkham stage." I replied that I was going to Arkham and apologized for my rude entry into his domicile, whereupon he continued, "Glad to see ye, young sir. New faces is scarce account around here. I ain't got much to cheer me up these days. Guess you hail from Boston, don't you? I never been there, but I can tell a town man when I see him. We had one for a D-stick schoolmaster in '84, but he quit sudden, and no one ever heard of him since." Here the old man lapsed into a kind of chuckle and made no explanation when I questioned him. He seemed to be in an aboundingly good humor, yet to possess those eccentricities which one might guess from his grooming. For some time he rambled on with almost feverish geniality, when it struck me to ask him how he came by so rare a book as Pigfetta's Regnum Congo. The effect of this volume had not left me, and I felt a certain hesitancy in speaking of it, but curiosity overmastered all the vague fears which I had steadily accumulated since my first glimpse of the house. To my relief, the question did not seem an awkward one, for the old man answered freely and volubly. "Well, that African book? Captain Ebenezer Holt traded me that in '68. Him as was killed in the war." Something about the name Ebenezer Holt caused me to look up sharply. I had encountered it in my genealogical work, but not in any record since the Revolution. I wondered if my host could help me in the task at which I was laboring, and resolved to ask him about it later on. He continued, "Ebenezer was on a Salem merchantman for years and picked up a slight of queer stuff at every port. He got this in London, I guess. He used to like to buy things at the shops. I was up to his house once on the hill trading horses. When I see this book, I relish the pictures, so I gave it to him in a swap. It's a queer book here. Let me get my spectacles." The old man fumbled among his rags, producing a pair of dirty and amazingly antique glasses with small octagon lenses and steel bows. Donning these, he reached for the volume on the table and turned the pages lovingly. "Ebenezer could read a little of this. 'Tis Latin, but I can't. Had 2 or 3 schoolmasters read me a bit. And Passion Clark, and they say got drowned in at the pond. Can you make anything out of it?" I told him that I could, and translated for his benefit a paragraph near the beginning. If I erred, he was not scholar enough to correct me, for he seemed childishly pleased at my English version. His proximity was becoming rather obnoxious, yet I saw no way to escape without offending him. I was amused at the childish fondness of this ignorant old man for the pictures in a book he could not read, and wondered how much better he could read if he read some English which adorned the room. This revelation of simplicity removed much of the ill-defined apprehension I had felt, and I smiled as my host rambled on. "Queer how pictures can set a body thinking. Take this in here near the front. You ever see trees like that with big leaves flopping on over and down? The men can't be niggers. They do beat all, kind of like Indians, I guess, even if they ain't in Africa. Some of these critters looks like monkeys, or half monkeys and half men, but I never heard of nothing like this. And here he pointed to a fabulous creature of the artist, which one might describe as a sort of dragon with the head of an alligator. And now I'll show you the best one, over here in the middle. The old man's speech grew a trifle thicker, and his eyes assumed a brighter glow, but his fumbling hands, though seemingly clumsier than before, were entirely adequate to their mission. The book fell open almost of its own accord, as if from frequent consultation at this place, to the repellent 12th plate, showing a butcher shop amongst the Aztec cannibals. My sense of restlessness returned, though I did not exhibit it. This especially bizarre thing was that the artist had made his Africans look like white men. The limbs and quarters hanging about the walls of the shop were ghastly, while the butcher with his axe was hideously incongruous. But my host seemed to relish the view as much as I disliked it. "What do you think of this? Ain't never seen the like hereabouts, eh? When I see this, I tell Jeb Holt, that's something to stir you up and make your blood tickle. When I read the scripture about slaying, like them midnights was slew, I kind of think things, but ain't got no picture of it. Everybody can see all there is to it. I suppose 'tis sinful, but ain't we all born living in sin? That feller being chopped gives you quite a tickle every time I look at him. I hate to keep looking at him to see where the butcher cut off his feet. There's the head on that branch, with one arm side of it and t'other arm's inside of a meat block." As the man mumbled on in a shocking ecstasy, the expression on his hairy, speckled face became indescribable, but his voice sank rather than mounted. My own sensations can scarcely be recorded. All the terror I had dimly felt before rushed upon me actively and vividly, and I knew the meaning of the ancient and abhorrent creature so near me with an infinite intensity. His madness, or at least his partial perversion, seemed beyond dispute. He was almost whispering now, with a huskiness more terrible than a scream, and I trembled as I listened. As I says, just queer how a picture sets you thinking. Do you know, young sir, I'm right set on listening here. After I got this book off Ab, I used to look at it a lot, especially when I'd hear Passion Clark ranting Sundays in his big wig. Once I tried something funny here, young sir, and get scared. All I done was to look at the picture of foreign condition for Mark. Killing sheep was kind of wonderful looking at it. The tone of the old man sank very low, sometimes becoming so faint that his words were hardly audible. I listened to the rain, and to the rattling of the bleared small-paned windows, and marked a rumbling of approaching thunder quite unusual for the season. Once a terrific flash and peal shook the frail house to its foundations, but the whisperer never seemed to notice it. Killing sheep was kind of more fun, but you know, it ain't quite satisfying. Queer how a craven gets a hold of you. And as you love the almighty young man, don't tell nobody. But I swear to God, that picture began to make me hungry for victuals I couldn't raise or buy. Here, sit still. What's ailing you? I didn't do nothing, only wondered how it would be if I did. They say meat makes blood and flesh and gives you new life. So I wondered if it wouldn't make a man live longer if it was more of the same. But the whisperer never continued. The interruption was not produced by my fright, nor by the rapidly increasing storm amidst whose fury I was presently to open my eyes on a smoky solitude of blackened ruins. It was produced by a simple, though somewhat unusual happening. The book lay flat between us, with the picture staring repulsively upward. As the old man whispered the words more of the same, a tiny splattering impact was heard, and something showed on the yellow paper of the upturned volume. I thought of the rain of a leaking roof, but rain is not red. On the butcher shop of the Aztec cannibals, a small red splattering glistened picturesquely, lending vividness to the horror of the engraving. The old man saw it and stopped whispering even before my expression of horror made it necessary. Saw it and glanced quickly toward the door of the room he had left an hour before. I followed his glance and beheld just above us, on the loose plaster of the ancient ceiling, a large irregular spot of red crimson. It seemed to spread even as I viewed it, shriek or move, but merely shut my eyes. A moment later came the titanic thunderbolt of thunderbolts, blasting that accursed house of unutterable secrets, and bringing the oblivion which alone saved my mind. End of Picture in the House by H.P. Lovecraft.